they're kind of like the Luddites who just believe that it's always going to be what it's always been. And so they get stuck in that, and they don't pay attention to what's going on around them.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Wealth Builders Podcast. I have got Ray Patterson back with us today as we're going to continue to talk about the business model canvas and how to pivot your business or ministry or real estate business and what indicators to look for. So Ray, I think this is going to be really helpful for people.
Well, I hope so, Karen. We want to deliver the value to them.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we do. That's so good.
Yeah.
I want to let people know, too, we have got a free download today. So when we get chatting, it's kind of hard to break away and share. So I get it at the beginning. This is Financial Breakthrough, Embracing God's Plan for Abundance. This is a free download available to you at wealthbuilders.org/break-through, or you can click on the link below and get a hold of this. So Ray, in the last podcast where we were talking about business model canvas, we kind of talked about the growth aspect, and today we're going to cover the pivot part. And so I'm pretty excited to talk about this because I don't know a business that doesn't have to at times pivot due to market conditions, technology, competitive landscape, whatever those things may be.
Absolutely, Karen. I think a lot of people get confused about pivot. And it's so important to understand that what you start out to do may not be what you end up doing.
That's really good.
And I'll tell you, small businesses are affected by this just as large businesses. In the business school at Karis and other places in our coaching business, we talk about some of the behemoths that we knew 10, 15 years ago that aren't there anymore.
It's true.
And it's because they don't really understand what business are they in, or they're kind of like the Luddites who just believe that it's always going to be what it's always been. And so they get stuck in that, and they don't pay attention to what's going on around them. I mean, a couple of examples. How many of you have been in a Blockbuster store lately? I mean, how many of you have tried to rent movies on CDs or DVDs? They're not around anymore.
They're not around.
Even Redbox, which basically took a market that Blockbuster could have had, but they ignored, right? Because they weren't paying attention to the times. Recently at the business school in Karis, I said something about, you don't want to continue to be a buggy whip manufacturer. Of course, then I realized that 90% of the audience had no idea what a buggy whip was.
They were just deer in headlights at you, right?
Yeah.
What did they just say?
And so I had to explain to them that was the accelerator for the horse and buggy. And it was really the accelerator for the horse. But understanding and sensing, picking up your head and viewing what's going on, not only just in your market space, but in the world around you. Because if it's happening anywhere in the world, it's ultimately going to affect you. And so utilizing the business model canvas to kind of always come back and test. Am I in the right business? What is my value proposition? And what is going on in the world around me immediately and at the larger world that I need to be aware of, which is going to change the way I need to do something or the something I need to do in order for me to continue to grow my business, expand my business, adjust it.
Yeah, that's really good. And it can be probably mainly external factors, but sometimes it can be internal factors as well. And so take us through, Ray, an example of, you mentioned Blockbuster, they didn't pivot.
Right, correct.
Take us through an example of a company that did pivot and were able to continue and move through some of the changes.
Well, can I use my personal example?
Sure.
I started out in a consulting business in 1996 full-time. And when I started, I was doing strategic planning, facilitation services to help organizations figure out where they wanted to be 5, 7, 10 years from now, and build a very specific, detailed implementation plan to begin to get there. And I could do that in 3 days or less, which really helped the companies out. And so I would do these 3-day facilitated offsites. The customer would be elated. I would send them an invoice. They would pay my bill. And then I wouldn't hear from them. Now, there was two problems here. One was I wasn't staying in touch with them, so I didn't have my customer relationship built right, and I knew that. But more detrimentally, I wouldn't hear from them, and so 6 or 9 months or a year later, I'd call them up, and they would say, "Oh, yeah, we remember when we did that offsite, and we got that great plan, and we started to implement, but then well, after we broke through the first couple of constraints and got our high priority objectives going, then we didn't know what to do next. And so we went back to doing what we were doing before we did the planning. So I'm not sure your planning worked." And the answer was always, no, the planning worked, the execution failed. So I decided to do my first pivot. And that was, I quit selling 3-day facilitation workshops. And I started selling 1-year relationships so that every month that customer could expect to see me or hear from me. And I could stay up with how they were implementing. Well, in doing that, that's where the next pivot came, because that opened up an opportunity for me to realize they need help with implementation facilitation, not just the planning facilitation. And so I built that in.
So they would get the plan and then it would sit.
Yes.
And you realize that the plan is not going to be valuable to them if they don't know how to actually carry it out.
Exactly. A well-written plan, poorly executed, will lead to bad results.
Totally.
But a well-written plan that is well executed and continually adjusted, and that's really what I wanted to do, was help them understand how to internalize that whole process and teach them that they could do it on their own. And I always told them, look, my job is to work myself out of a job and teach you how to do this so you don't need me. But in the back of my mind, I was always listening for what else they needed.
Yeah.
And so that enabled me to pivot into even expanded services with existing customers. And I got into doing requirements facilitation for IT systems for that customer as part of their implementation. Now I'm adding additional value. And I also found opportunities to be able to bring in other colleagues to help them with things that I couldn't necessarily do. So again, my pivot was another slight pivot based on listening to the customer and then bringing the services that they needed to them. And it's, I'll take another example if I can continue to rattle on. We've worked with a number of people in the coaching business. I'm thinking of Austin Brown in particular. And so he's used the services to hone his construction business and take that to the next level. And now he's looking at some pivots of how he can go even beyond for some industry association kind of work. And that's all the further I want to go with that right now. But the important part is we're constantly learning. And if we're constantly learning and paying attention to the customers and how our internal operations support them, then we can do more in terms of bringing that value to the marketplace. And that's, I think, an important piece that we want our coaching customers to understand.
Definitely.
It's not just about, the real way you improve your business is to improve the value that you bring to your customers. And there are so many companies that never think about who the ultimate customer is.
Right.
It's not just the business that I service, but it's the people that they service. And if we can dig into that provides us with the opportunity. So there's this need that many companies never look at, which is what is going on in the world? What are the market conditions that are changing? What are the industry conditions that are changing? What's happening in the industry that I'm in? And the other piece I would say is people narrowly focus on the industry rather than taking the broader view. The railroads in this country are not what they are in other countries because the U.S. railroad industry thinks they're in the train business. They don't understand they're really in the transportation business, and that could provide much broader market opportunities for them.
That's really good. I was just thinking about an example. Our favorite restaurant in South Lake, Texas, that we go to, it's called Calabrese. And they had a planned pivot. So sometimes, and I'll explain that what I'm talking about with that, but sometimes when we know that we're going to venture out and we're going to start something, you might focus in one area, but to sustain and hit your 3 and your 5 year goals, you have to have a planned pivot. So with them, when they opened, it was a brand new restaurant in the area, they focused a lot on attracting customers because no one knew about them. So they had, let's just say their first year, I don't know that it was their first year, but they really focused on getting their name out, attracting customers so that people would experience them.
Absolutely.
Then what they did is they had a built-in pivot that they would focus once they had people coming in, that they would focus on getting them to return. Okay? So initially they had, I think it was, I could be off here, we were chatting, I think 17% of the people that were coming to the restaurant were repeat customers. And they realized for them to actually accomplish their financial goals and be the restaurant they wanted, they needed to move it up. So when they pivoted and they put strategies in place, which we talk a lot about strategies, and then what are those actions that are actually going to produce success with those strategies, they were up to over 70% repeat customers. So their business model shifted. And they knew it from the beginning, but they were acquiring information, learning, and then now they don't need to advertise because they've got them all coming back.
Well, and the beauty of that is, it's the multiplication.
It is.
Because if I have a place that I like to go and they're working to take care of me, it's like Cheers. Everybody goes where he wants to go, where everybody knows your name, And so you develop your own tribe, basically, and then that tribe talks to their friends. And then all of a sudden there's some of the new customers coming in that expands the business. And as you often point out in the marketing side of things, that word of mouth is the most powerful. So I think that's another area where a lot of businesses don't put enough effort into retaining and servicing well the customers they have.
I remember in banking, we had to pivot all the time, and a lot of it was due to external factors.
Sure.
So, for example, the interest rates, if they would go up or down, you had to shift your strategy and you had to pivot. But I really like that example that you used, because sometimes people focus so much on getting new customers in, which is expensive. It's a lot of work. But you're right, they don't take care of their existing ones. And so I share this story in business school. It was so funny in banking. It was all about new checking accounts. And it was in the Twin Cities area. You had TCF come out with free checking. Well, then pretty soon you had to have a new free checking. You know what I'm saying? So you're kind of getting on board, trying to get all these people. But when we started to dig in deep, we're kind of like, wait, what's happening? We're opening up more checking accounts than we've ever opened, but our balances are going down. Well, when you have free checking, you're going to have low balances.
Right.
And then the people that was actually our core customer were leaving. And so they were closing their accounts to maybe jump over for something. And we had to pivot and say, wait a minute, I'm not sure that opening all these accounts, free checking, and letting our customers go out the back door is the way to go. So those are shifts you have to make. Sometimes there's things that regulation can impact. I know in banking too, there was a lot of regulations that would come down, and all at once, wow, what we were doing maybe in mortgage lending, we had to pivot to comply, run those numbers and make the adjustments. And I think that's the fun part of business, but I also think that's the challenge where you want to have people, and ourselves as business owners, we want to see what's coming around the corner.
Absolutely.
Or stay up on the industry things to know.
Absolutely. And what just popped in my mind with that is, we need key performance indicators to look at our business, but we have to be careful in picking those key performance indicators, because what we measure will drive the business.
Absolutely.
And so if the business is driven by, let's open new accounts, and years ago, maybe not so much now, but years ago, I ran into this with the telephone companies, particularly as mobile phones were coming online. Yes, I'm that old, I remember.
I do too.
But I went through 4 different telephone companies because they paid more attention to getting new customers than they did taking care of their existing customers. And so I just became a new customer because I got better customer service. Until their service dropped for existing customers, then I go to another, then I'd hop. And so some of it just brought to me the point that we do have to watch what we actually measure, and we want to make sure that we're measuring the right things in our business. And that those key performance indicators, I'm going to tie it back to the BMGC, are part of our key activities, and monitoring the key resources will point to that, as well as what's our customers telling us.
Yeah, we talk about that at length too, and we go through an extensive process in coaching, because we start with what we call a clarity survey, which uncovers what's happening in the business or potential business. Then from there, we identify what are the core organization objectives, and then what are the key performance indicators that are going to actually help us reach those core organization objectives. So it's sort of like this onion that you keep peeling, and you go in deeper, 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 but it all starts with the vision, the purpose, why does our business exist? And then we do leading indicators and lagging indicators. Because the other thing is, with the key activities, if you don't measure with each position what the key activities are, you'll never see the results.
Exactly.
And that's really important too, but it all has to tie together and roll up, to many things. But the main thing is, what are we trying to, and we always have general or overall revenue, net revenue.
Sure.
Those, because we're,
standard.
that we're not a hobby, right? That we're a business.
Right.
And so it's just fun to sort of unfold those. And we work on that a lot.
We do. And I want to emphasize here that at times when we're not getting the results that we think we want, we do need to take a look at what we are measuring, because maybe that is an indicator that we're measuring the wrong things.
Or maybe you're measuring the right things, but your strategy is off.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
the thing. We might measure certain things that we should be measuring, but if what we thought, if the activities we thought were going to bring results are not bringing results, then it's time to change those activities, which you're right, would change maybe what we measure too.
Yep.
But the key performance indicators are really important for you to keep like an idea of what's actually happening in the organization before you get to the end of the year, and then you realize like, oh my gosh, we missed everything.
Yeah. And that's the importance of understanding what they are, making sure they are the right ones,
Yes.
making sure that your systems match that your strategies, your processes, and your systems that you have in place are built to complement those things.
Yes.
And when that all comes together, that enables you and your employees to fully understand how we're doing the business, so that when a pivot does come, when there's market forces, technology changes, regulatory changes, we have a place to go back to then methodically go through our business processes, systems, programs, and the indicators, so that we can plan out what the pivot is.
Right.
And we can execute that in an orderly fashion,
Yeah.
and in a fashion that we can stay ahead of, rather than constantly react to.
Right. And another part of that, Ray, is from that, look at your reward systems.
Absolutely.
Because if you have an organization, you're making these adjustments, or you're deciding that these are the KPIs that are important, but when it comes review time, that the employee is not being measured on that. They're being measured, and their raise depends on it, on another set of criteria, that can really impact the performance. And there's times too, I mean, I've worked at organizations where we've had to focus in the banking. We had to be operational because we had 4 mergers in 5 years. And it was like overnight, okay, now we need to become a sales organization. Well, all the KPIs at that point, or maybe not all of them, but a lot of them we had to shift because it was all about safety, just not getting in trouble. Okay, now we're ready to grow. So if my performance reviews were still all focused on operational and administrative, right, with no wiggle room, but we're trying to be a sales organization, I've got to reward people for the actions that I know are going to bring results. And I see a lot of organizations that they've got a miss there, or they've got a leader in the organization that's they have a pet project maybe, and maybe that pet project doesn't actually line up with the organization's objectives. Then you've got people, I've just seen this so much, I'm just laughing about a situation I just recall so clearly. It was not communicated to the leaders, nor were the leaders being held accountable to the overall vision. So the people in this department, all they wanted to do is please their boss, which of course you would, right? Yeah. But if their boss is not aligned to where the organization is going, those employees don't have a chance really to succeed, because they're going off in the wrong direction.
Right. I remember, and I believe the author was Alfie Kahn, Kahn, I think, had a book, a writing called Punished by Rewards. And it was about this whole concept that if we're going to get what we measure and reward. If we don't have those selected properly, we're going to get results that we don't want. But it's because we've built a system to incentivize something that's not aligned with
Yes.
what our ultimate goals are.
Yes.
And that can lead to a whole bunch of behavior that just isn't complementary to where you're
It's
going
so
and what
true.
you do.
You know, one of the things that Billy and Becky, we were just talking about business in general, and you know, we know Billy's amazing in business, but let me tell you, Mrs. Becky is brilliant. And we were just talking through something, and she said, you know, when you analyze something, you always want to follow the money.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I was like, so simple, but so profound. So I went back in and I was like, okay, gosh, you know what? I think we're emphasizing things that are not lining up with actually following the money or following the results that end up supporting the vision. And so what I learned from that is that we had to make some changes. And it affected a lot of things. But also, if there's something that is extremely important for your organization, if you can tie incentives to the results of the team.
Absolutely.
Okay? And if you do that, you end up removing the competition between your employees.
Absolutely.
And you end up uniting how they prioritize their day because everybody gets an incentive when this happens.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we could talk forever on this, and we do when we're in the coaching opportunities, but there's just so much that we can leverage here.
I just want to quickly, if I can, share a piece that a business school student spoke to me this morning.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, money is referred to as currency. And we know that money flows. It's never static. It's always going.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, when he thought about this or somebody mentioned it to him, they said, you know, money, currency flows like electricity. And it flows to those who are well grounded.
Interesting.
And so I just, you know, that put me on a thought trail that we don't often make that connection, right? And so what we're really talking about here is going back to follow the money. And that's one of my wife's favorite sayings too. In her case, it's on the political side of things, which is also follow the money. You'll find where things happen that need to be corrected.
Which is happening right now, every day.
Yeah.
So interesting.
But this idea of following the money is a sound business principle.
Yes.
Because we get money in, we use that, it flows through the financials, through our activities, through the work of our employees, through the products and services we deliver. And when we're not seeing that flow, that there are the indicators of where we need to concentrate efforts. And I'll tie that right back to thinking about that in terms of what are the constraints that are keeping that money from flowing.
So good.
That gives us an indicator of when we need and where we need to pivot or make the changes. And, you know, I could go on easily about Eli Goldratt and the goal and the theory of constraints. All of these things are tools that as business owners and operators, we need some help with at times.
Yes.
And that's why people go into a coaching program, to get an independent set of eyes and ears to help them, to see the things that are hidden in plain sight. But when you're in business and you're focused on executing every day, you often don't have the luxury or don't take the time and discipline to pick up your head and look at what's going on in the world.
So
and that,
good.
to me, is one of the profound benefits of a coaching program, a mentoring relationship. And it's not a once and done kind of deal.
Right,
and
it's ongoing.
That's where I just I believe the Wealth Builders coaching program, going to school, these are all things that help us pick up our head. It's why we come to conferences.
It is.
So that we can take that time and think different.
That's so good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ray. And if you are interested in learning more about the coaching, go to wealthbuilders.org and click on coaching. Also, I want to remind you that we have got the Wealth Builders Real Estate Workshop is coming up. We have limited seating, so come be a part of that. It's going to be an amazing weekend, and you can go to wealthbuilders.org/events and get registered. I'd recommend that you come in person, but if you absolutely cannot come in person, we have a live stream available as well. So Ray, thank you so much for being on the Wealth Builders podcast today and for being a coach with us.
Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks all of you Wealth Builders family for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Wealth Builders podcast.